Baseball Odds Watch podcast, and this is the last podcast that we will do before a champion is crowned for the 2024 MLB season, which is amazing because it is down to 2. We started off at 30, then we went into our playoff bracket, and then it was 8, and then it was 4, and it's down to 2, and it's the 2 top seeds in the National League and in the American League. It is the New York Yankees and the Los Angeles Dodgers, and it's the 2 teams that have been the only teams all year to be World Series favorites. And we'll look at it in a second at what that looks like now. But all year long, when we do our monthly checks and when we started doing this podcast and we do our weekly check of the World Series championship odds, about 98% of the time, the favorites were the Los Angeles Dodgers, right? And say what you want, but that firepower on that roster all year long. And then the trade deadline came and they made up for some injuries. And they went and got more firepower. And they went and got more people. It made them favorites. And to date, right up until this point, it has paid off dividends for them. The Yankees, they made their moves really in the offseason, re-signed Judge, went and traded for Juan Soto. And then at the deadline, they went and got Jazz Chisholm. Right? They made most of their moves, though. That most of their roster's been pretty much the same all season long. And it comes down to that. So instead of doing a what just happened, I think it's easier if we just go and talk about the CSs, because the what just happened, there was so much that just happened, right? Game 1, we'll start ALCS, because I think there was a lot more news in the ALCS because those games were a lot more close. They were a lot more nail biters than the NLCS was. The NLCS was kind of a lot of step-ons, but the ALCS, it felt like every game could go either way. Now, Aaron Boone said something leading up to the ALCS in the press conferences, and it was that he was tired of hearing about the Guardians being an underestimated team. And I agreed with that. I think I said last podcast that they were a really good team. And they were a really good team all year long. They were one of the first teams to clinch. I didn't really understand why they were being underestimated. I guess hindsight's 2020 because now they won one game against the Yankees. And it's like, well, that's why. But it's not like any of those games were easy wins for the Yankees. Game 1 was close. Game 2 was sloppy, right? What really saved the Yankees was the ALCS MVP, or the man that would go on to be the ALCS MVP in Giancarlo Stanton, having the postseason of his life. He had 4 home runs. All of them were in big moments. All of them either tied or gave the Yankees the lead. So, thank goodness for the Yankees that he was on, because we know Aaron Judge was not. He did have one big home run against Emmanuel Clase. And I want to talk about Clase a little bit here in 1 second. But the Yankee offense ran through Giancarlo Stanton. I mean, ran through Giancarlo Stanton. If not for him, they're not here. And yeah, we'll talk about the the Soto moment as well, because obviously that was huge. But the offense ran through Giancarlo Stanton. He had some hits there from Gleyber Torres, who put himself in great position to be driven in. He looked very good. I know I was calling for him to be traded a few months ago. I still kind of feel like he should have been. But Aaron Judge wasn't the guy. Now, as far as Emmanuel Clase goes, that went completely wrong for Stephen Vogt and the Guardians. And I think it got to a point at the end in Game 5 where Stephen Vogt didn't trust him. Because we saw it all postseason long, right? We saw it all year long first. How good Emmanuel Clase was, how much Stephen Vogt had confidence in him. He didn't hesitate to turn to him. 8th inning, 9th inning, didn't matter. Emmanuel Clase was coming into a game. It meant that you were losing, right? For the Guardians, it meant you were winning the game. But if you're on the other team and you saw Emmanuel Clase coming in, you were losing. You were losing. Now, the postseason, that got turned on its head. He was good at first, and then he faces Kerry Carpenter in that series in the DS, and Kerry Carpenter hits that 3-run home run on him in that tie game. And the Detroit Tigers win that game. But then he comes back, and he looks great again. And you think he's back, right? You think, okay, Kerry Carpenter just got one off on him. But he couldn't shut down the Yankees, right? When he gave up those back-to-back home runs in Game 3, right, to Giancarlo Stanton and Aaron Judge. Granted, the Guardians still won that game. I think it messed with Emmanuel Clase's psyche. I think closers are the most mental pitchers in baseball. I think they kind of have to be, right? You have to know in your head that you're dominant. You have to know in your head and be confident in your head that nobody can touch you. And when you do get touched, it can kind of break you. You know, the closer, the Dominican closer, I can't remember his name, that was the closer in the WBC. I saw an interview with him a while back, and he was saying that the closer role is like that. You're going to give up the home run eventually. It's going to happen at some point. You know, you're not going to be perfect. Mariano Rivera blew an entire World Series in Arizona. It was a base hit, but it wasn't a home run, but he blew it, right? And still went down as one of the greatest. At some point, you're going to get hit as a closer. At some point, you're going to get rocked. You've got to come back from it. You've got to come back from it. And that's what goes wrong a lot of times with closers, is the second they're not perfect, the second they do give it up, they lose themselves. And so when I saw Emmanuel Clase give up those back-to-back home runs, and then we all saw the kind of Instagram story, right, where he was posting his trophies and this and that, I saw a guy that was in his mind trying to kind of flex on everybody, like, look, I'm still this good, but was trying to hype himself up. And I didn't know if that was going to work, because the reality is Emmanuel Clase in that moment did not need to prove to anybody but himself that he could still do the job. And so then what happens? He goes back out there and he blows it again for the Guardians. And then that time they end up losing the game. There was no superhero moment from the big Christmas in that one, in game 4. So then we go to game 5, and Stephen Vogt doesn't even go to him. Juan Soto's at the plate, 2 men on in the 8th inning, and Stephen Vogt, was it the 8th or the 9th inning? In the 8th inning, and Stephen Vogt decides, I'm going to stick with Hunter Gaddis. So Emmanuel Clase had lost the trust of his manager. So now it's the drawing board for Emmanuel Clase. It's not the drawing board for the Guardians, because that team is still great. You know, there were a couple of things that really set up the Guardians to lose. Brian Rocchio errors, things like that. But Emmanuel Clase is the only one on that team that's really got to go back to the drawing board and figure things out. Because again, as a closer, you're going to give up the home run, but to stay a closer, you got to come back from it. Aroldis Chapman is a perfect example of a closer not coming back from it. Continued to give up the home run and continued to give up the home run in the big moments and lost it. Going all the way back to his days with Chicago. And he gave it up in the World Series in Game 7, right? And then it just progressed while he was with the Yankees. Gave one up to Jose Altuve. Gave one up to Michael Brasso. And lost series on those home runs. And he just stopped being that guy. And then he couldn't even do it in the regular season. And I would hate to see that happen for a guy like Emmanuel Clase, who really might win the Cy Young for this year in the American League. Well, actually, he might not. It's definitely going to go to Terry Skubal, but he's going to get some votes. He's going to get some votes. Now, again, Giancarlo Stanton came alive for the Yankees, and we know what that did. Soto in the clutch. My God, what an at-bat. I want to say something about that at-bat. If you or the children in your life are trying to learn to be better hitters, watch Juan Soto. It was simple. Bat to ball until you get your pitch. See the strike zone well. Bat to ball, fight off pitches until you get yours. He was waiting, sitting on a Hunter Gaddis fastball. Hunter Gaddis went changeup after changeup after changeup. There was a point in the at-bat where Hunter Gaddis threw, I think it was an 80-mile-per-hour changeup, and Juan Soto was late on that pitch and hit it to the opposite field foul. He was that locked in. I know you're thinking, well, why does that mean he's locked in if he's late on an 80-mile-per-hour pitch? Because he's just seeing the ball so well that he's sitting. When you sit that long on a changeup, you are seeing the ball out of the pitcher's hand. And then you can look at the head nods, right? Every time. And he said, and I think at one point he mouthed something like, there's nothing you've got on me. You can't get anything by me. And then he gets the fastball and he destroys it. I mean, this is textbook hitting. If you're going to teach hitting, look at Juan Soto. Look at that at bat. Battles and battles and battles. How long did he have 2 strikes? I think it was an 8-pitch at bat. And then he gets the pitch he wants. And he jumped all over it. He stayed on top of it. He swung short to it, long through it, launch, and it was gone. And the Yankees are in the World Series. And it's been said that might have been the greatest at-bat ever. I'm not going to agree or disagree. But as far as teachable, and if you want the future generations to be good hitters, it's Juan Soto you want to model yourself after. It's not anybody else in baseball right now. And you can look at numbers and say, well, this guy's got 50 home runs and this guy's got this and that. Juan Soto is clutch. And it's not because he has something inside him that makes him so much more clutch. He's just prepared. He's so prepared. And when he went into that at bat with Hunter Gaddis, you could see the preparation. Just like you see pretty much every Juan Soto at bat. When he's shuffling and he's nodding his head and he's shaking his head no when he sees a ball go out of the zone. And he's been doing this since he was 20 years old, back to the World Series against the Astros when he was with the Nationals against Justin Verlander. It's not a gift, it's preparation and then seizing the moment. You're only going to get 3 or 4 at bats, maybe 5, 6 if it's an insane game. And you've got to be prepared for them every game. Granted, yes, this is the big leagues. They've got scouting reports. They've got this, metrics, iPads, all of it. But if you're in Little League, you're facing a lot of the same hitters. Or if you're in high school ball, you can look things up, right? College ball, same thing. Preparation meets timing every time. And if you're ready for the moment, you're going to be the Juan Soto of the moment. Now, another thing that really got the Yankees through this was bullpen. It looked outstanding, except one game. But the Yankees came into late September with a question mark at the closer position. They had no idea who it was going to be. They knew it couldn't be Clay Holmes. Everybody knew it couldn't be Clay Holmes. And out of nowhere comes Luke Weaver. I mean, the guy was a starter who barely made the spring training roster. We're going to talk a little more about him later. But they have a closer. Now, not to be outdone were some of the Guardians. They had some really big moments as well. First of all, the big Christmas. It had been an entire postseason waiting to see if Jhonkensy Noel was going to have a moment, if he was going to have that big home run. And he got it. I mean, he got it. And now he's kind of etched himself in Guardians lore for a long time going forward, right? But all season long, he was just a terror. He was terrifying to pitch to. He gets his pitch against, of all people, Luke Weaver. And again, preparation meets timing. He gets a Luke Weaver changeup in the zone and absolutely drills it. And one of the best calls from Brian Anderson in the booth. I got to give him his flowers. Every time Brian Anderson's in the booth, he does a great job. I've been watching highlights of other playoffs and hearing how bored sometimes Joe Buck would sound. And I'm like, oh my goodness, where was Brian Anderson this whole time? And every time it's so exciting. But the big Christmas, as Brian Anderson said, the best gift under the tree. A game-tying 2-run home run in the bottom of the 9th against the Yankee closer, Luke Weaver. And we talked about bouncing back, right? When we talked about Clase, Luke Weaver came right back. But wow, what a moment for the big Christmas. And now, again, adds to that prolific, underrated Guardians roster. Right? This underestimated. I wouldn't even say underrated. I would just say underestimated Guardians roster. Because that team is really good. But not to be outdone, David Fry. Clutch home run after clutch home run by this guy. I mean, I don't know who had his jersey coming into this postseason. And there are a lot of times that Stephen Vogt was turning to David Fry off the bench, but he became undeniable. A game-winning home run, a game-tying home run, a game-winning grand slam at one point this postseason. Look, if you're a Guardians fan, I'm sorry that you lost to my Yankees, but at the end of the day, you had a lot of beautiful moments to hold on to. And I know it's just a consolation prize at this point. I know it's not what you wanted. But the guy looked like David Ortiz. If the game was on the line and David Fry was up, he was getting it done, man. Incredible. Incredible. Let's move on to the NLCS. And I said there was kind of less to talk about in this NLCS. And in all reality, there was. Because most of these games' scores were not close by really any means. I mean, game 6 was 10-5, Dodgers. Game 5 was 10-2, Dodgers. Or I'm sorry, game 4 was 10-2, Dodgers. Game 5 was 12-6, Mets. Game 3, 8-0, Dodgers. Game 2, 7-3, Mets. Game 1, 9-0, Dodgers. I mean, there was not a lot of drama here. The drama was just whether your team's going to win or lose. The drama was MVP frontrunner versus MVP candidate, which again, I mean, that delivered. Both of those guys did amazing. Ohtani had a home run in his, I believe it was his very first at bat or very first game at some point. I mean, the guys delivered. Lindor and Ohtani delivered, but there wasn't much drama, right? It didn't feel like a postseason series. They just felt like games. Again, blowout after blowout. The one thing that I noticed was what everybody else noticed. It's where did Tommy Edman come from? And what I mean by that is it's not that Tommy Edman's not a known player. It's not that Tommy Edman's a non-factor player. It's that Tommy Edman on this Dodgers team was not the guy that I think anyone looked at and said, this is the guy that's going to be the game changer. He's the X factor here. He's the guy that's going to change this game. And then goes out there and wins the MVP. What a series it was for the guy. What a series. Let me pull up the numbers here. I'm not remembering them off the top of my head. He wasn't the only one. 11 hits, 11 plus RBIs, hit 407. I mean, amazing. Amazing. That's what you want. One home run, fine, who cares? But 11 RBIs is a lot in one series that only went 6 games. Plus, he had to play shortstop. Just saying. Yes, he came up as a shortstop and then went to the Dodgers, and he was not the shortstop. He was a utility guy, center fielder, outfielder, wherever they needed him, right? Then Miguel Vargas' injury starts acting up. They don't trust Mookie at short, so guess what? It was Tommy Edman. Now, shout out to the Mets. Shout out to Mark Vientos hitting a grand slam after they walked Lindor to get to him, making them pay. I think there were a few times that Yankee fans were hoping that would happen with Aaron Judge. I know I was. Didn't happen. But Mark Vientos was a guy that I saw coming into this series, and I said it last week, and he could be a game changer. And in some games, the games that they won, he was. The other guy that I would have considered for NLCS MVP was Andy Pages. The dude seemed unstoppable. Right? He wasn't, but he looked like he was sometimes. Now, I said it before. I'm going to say it again. I said it at least on my Instagram. And it's that Mets fans, I get it. Same thing I said about the Guardians, right? But Mets fans, I get it. This isn't what you wanted, but it was amazing. And you've got to be a realist about it here. Your expectation for this season was not very high. I said in my 30 teams in 30 days before Instagram suspended the initial baseball odds watch account, I said in my 30 teams in 30 days, watch out because these Mets could put something together. And they did. And it was fun to watch. Forget about Grimace. Forget about the OMG song. The way the Mets played, the way they looked, the way they ignited their crowd. The Mets did way more than expected. And all people surrounding the Mets organization, the team, the fans, should be proud of that, should be happy about that. I get it. You didn't go to the World Series. You got eliminated by the Dodgers. But at the end of the day, what were you supposed to do this year? Because it wasn't get where you got. And you did. So I get it. I know you're tired of consolation prizes, but you got to hold on to that. Now, another thing that I noticed in this NLCS was people were getting really tired of the Shohei Ohtani attention, we'll call it, because I'm trying to keep it G-rated. So I'm not going to use the terms I want to see. But here's the thing that we have to remember about the playoffs specifically. Shohei Ohtani is the draw, right? The playoffs are when most people watch baseball again or watch it for the first time, right? They know the name Shohei Ohtani. They may not know the name Kike Hernandez. They may not know the name Gavin Lux. They may not know the name Mark Vientos. They know the name Shohei Ohtani. It's kind of like when you watch the Super Bowl and they keep showing Taylor Swift. It's because there's an audience that's not normally here that is here right now, and they're here for a specific reason. And it's that big name. It's Shohei Ohtani. You got to remember where this guy's coming from. In Japan, they were showing the World Series. In Japan, there were very high ratings for the World Series. Are you telling me that the entire country of Japan, are you telling me that the Japanese citizens are tuned in to watch Francisco Lindor? Or are tuned in to watch Pete Alonso or Alex Vesia or Austin Barnes or Will Smith? They're there for Shohei Ohtani. Just like most people that don't watch baseball are tuned in for Shohei Ohtani. I don't watch basketball, but I will watch for LeBron James if the Lakers are on. And that's kind of where that comes from. It's not a MLB thing. It's not a baseball thing. It's a media thing. You're getting wrong you're getting mad at the wrong people if this is something you're mad about. You're getting mad at MLB like it's MLB that wants this to happen. Reality is the media, right? TBS, FS1, they have to do that. They have to tailor the show. It is a show at the end of the day. There is a director. There is a producer. There are writers. There's an entire truck outside the stadium of guys just editing stuff really fast to put it together to put on the TV. So that's where that's coming from. The same way you're going to see a lot of LeBron James if you turn on a Lakers game. If you're a Lakers fan, you're like, why am I seeing Bronny? Why am I seeing Bronny and LeBron? I don't care. Bronny's not that good. And LeBron's old. I want to see these other cats, right? But A guy like me who doesn't watch basketball, I kind of want to see that. And that's where that comes from. So you're mad at the wrong people, is what I'm trying to say. You want to be mad at Manfred or MLB, you're mad at the wrong people. Be mad at FS1. Be mad at Fox Sports. Be mad at TBS, at all these people, because that's just what they have to do. There's an entire population that's specifically watching for one guy. What are you going to ignore that? They did win the last World Baseball Classic, in case you forgot. You can't ignore it. You can't let it go by the wayside. So I just figured I'd touch on that a little bit in this episode because you're going to see more of it for the next however long the World Series lasts. So let's move on to the World Series. The Clash of the Titans. This is the first World Series since the new format that the two top seeds make it to the championship. A lot of them were getting eliminated in the first round coming off the bye week. So let's take a look at the odds real quick. And the favorites to win the World Series, as has been most of the season, and it should come as a surprise to no one, are the Los Angeles Dodgers at minus 122, according to FanDuel, making the New York Yankees very slight underdogs at plus 104. Now, I was at the Dodgers-Yankee game, one of them, in June. Yankee Stadium was a zoo in June. I know that there's this whole thing that the prices of the tickets are no less than $1,000 at either stadium. Duh. I mean, it is the World Series after all. And it is two very potent franchises when it comes to finances. But shouldn't be surprised. Shouldn't be surprised at all. Because it's not just that it's the World Series. It's a World Series between the 2024 Yankees and the 2024 Dodgers. This is a clash of the Titans. You have the AL MVP for this year going up against the NL MVP for this year. When is the last time we saw that in a World Series? You have one guy that hit 50 home runs going up against another guy that hit 50 home runs this season. That's never happened before. This is a one-of-one World Series. You have the two of the highest payrolls in baseball, right? And what I don't like is now that that's happening, people are making an argument for a salary cap. Well, where was this argument last year when the Diamondbacks made it? Crickets. Lots of crickets. Where was this argument when the Nationals won the World Series? Them crickets just keep getting louder. So I don't want to hear it now. The 1 year that the Yankees make the World Series and the 1 year that the Dodgers make it with them, now all of a sudden it's a payroll thing. Now all of a sudden baseball needs a redistribution of funds and a salary cap. Are we for real now, guys? You just sound like sore losers. Because the Guardians very well could have beaten the Yankees 3 more times. It's not like those games weren't close. Now, going into this World Series, because of all that money that they're spending, both teams have an equally enormous chip on their shoulders. Both teams' fan bases are begging them to win this championship. Now, here's another layer to that chip on the shoulder, right? The Yankees haven't even been to the World Series since the last time they won it in 2009. It's been 15 years. The Dodgers haven't been to the World Series since the last time they won it in 2020. But it was 2020. And I think at this point, even the Dodgers want to feel vindicated and win a championship, right? Kind of like when the Astros won the World Series and everyone kind of had to swallow everything they said about the 2017 championship because there they were winning it again with most of the same guys, right? Now the Dodgers, Dave Roberts, Mookie Betts, they want to win in a full season and the long playoff format and be able to say, okay, what do you got to say now? We did it 4 years later. What's the problem? And I would agree. I would agree with all of it. I would agree with, well, 2020 was a shortened season. You got guys when they started to get hot, right? Luke Voigt was almost MVP. Jose Abreu was the MVP. I mean, you got guys when they just started to get hot in 2020. Let's be real here. Randy Arozarena hit 11 home runs in that postseason. This is the one that they want. This is the one that they want. Now let's add on to that chip on the shoulder of both teams and talk about the managers that need to prove themselves. Because it's been said all year about both Dave Roberts and both Aaron Boone that they're essentially managing to keep their jobs. Now, that's not over because you won a World Series. Not by a long shot. Because it's going to take one wrong move to get you kicked out the door. Let me take you back to 2003. When the Boston Red Sox were playing against the New York Yankees and Aaron Boone was a player in that series. 2003, Grady Little was the manager of the Boston Red Sox as a Black Hawk helicopter flies over my apartment. In 2003, Grady Little was the manager of the Boston Red Sox. Grady Little made one wrong move. And it was to leave Pedro Martinez in the game after Pedro said, I'm good. I think Pedro had something like 110 pitches. Left him in the game. Yankees tie the game. Then a couple innings later, Aaron Boone hits the walk-off home run off Tim Wakefield. Red Sox go home. Yankees move on. It's going to take one decision like that for one of these managers to still lose their job when this series ends. And both managers know that. In my mind, as a Yankee fan, I looked at the move to stick with Tommy Kahnle and not go to Luke Weaver. And then a man gets on in the ninth and said, if Luke Weaver doesn't come in this game, we lose this game and then end up getting eliminated, it'll be because of that Aaron Boone gets fired, right? Let's look at the other side of that series. Stephen Vogt made a decision in his first year as manager, so we'll cut him some slack, to not go to his closer against Juan Soto, to stick with Hunter Gaddis. And we know how that ended up. Juan Soto hits the 3-run home run. Now, first year as manager, he did great things all the way up until this point, so he gets a little slack. But Aaron Boone and Dave Roberts don't get the same slack. They have made bad decisions. They have had amazing rosters and have not gotten even here, let alone through here. So both managers know. The media knows. Their teams know. The fans know. Both of these managers are managing for their job. Now let's add one more layer to that chip on the shoulder. Name as many big names on these two rosters as you can. You could go for a solid amount of time. Name as many players as you can on these two rosters with huge contracts. You could go on for a lot of time. They're interchangeable. You've got Aaron Judge making an insane amount of money. Garrett Cole making an insane amount of money. Giancarlo Stanton making an insane amount of money. And Juan Soto is going to make an insane amount of money. On the other side, we know what Shohei Ohtani got paid. We know Yamamoto got insanely paid. And people wonder, well, this guy hasn't even pitched on a big league mound yet. He only pitched in Japan. Teoscar Hernandez is getting paid. Glass now. I believe Will Smith has an insane contract. I mean, we could go on. And it's just another chip on the shoulder. And then you look at the rosters themselves. I get the advantage, Dodgers. Why? They've been here. Freddie Freeman is a World Series champion. Mookie Betts is a World Series champion, multi-time World Series champion. Tommy Edman has been to the playoffs. Max Muncy is a World Series champion. Will Smith is a World Series champion. Shohei Ohtani is a World Baseball Classic champion. Yoshinobu Yamamoto is World Baseball Classic champion. Right? The question comes in experience for the bullpen and the pitching, but they've looked great till now, so why would that be so much of a question? Now, the Yankees, they don't have a lot. They don't have a lot of championship experience besides their manager, but they've got guys that have been in the playoffs. Garrett Cole has been in the playoffs. Believe it or not, Jazz Chisholm was in the playoffs last year with the Marlins. Jose Trevino's been in the playoffs. Aaron Judge, Juan Soto's won a World Series. Alex Verdugo has won a World Series. Giancarlo Stanton has been in the playoffs. They've been here. They've been there. They haven't been here, some of them. But when we go line by line, we're shaping ourselves up for an amazing, amazing World Series. And then you both got at least one bullpen pitcher that's kind of come out of nowhere to be the savior. I'm talking Brent Honeywell for the Los Angeles Dodgers, who was pretty much DFA'd, pretty much out of the league. Made the postseason roster very last minute. Dave Roberts made that decision to keep this guy. And now he's been an innings eater and a clutch late innings reliever, high leverage guy. And on the other side is Luke Weaver, the Yankees closer, who was a failed starting pitcher. He's not supposed to be a bullpen guy. And then this offseason decided, let's make that switch. And the Yankees, last minute, made a decision, okay, we'll keep him on the roster this season, threw him in the bullpen, and then at the very end of the season decided he was going to be their closer because he just fell into the role. Blew one save this postseason, one bad pitch to John Casey Noel. I don't know who wants this more. It's not as simple. There are some World Series, there are some playoff series where you can tell going into it before a pitch is thrown, this team's the one that wants it. This team's the one that wants to be here. This one, I don't know. And the game one starters have been announced. And it's Jack Flaherty for the Dodgers. And it's Garrett Cole for the Yankees. And now here's another little nugget because it's got to be talked about. Jack Flaherty wanted to be a Dodger as a kid. Garrett Cole wanted to be a Yankee as a kid. Who's going to take that mound with more adrenaline running through them? Who's going to take that mound and dominate for their childhood dream team? I mean, it doesn't get better than this. And then you look at the Yankees, and here's one thing I guess, as a fan, have to say, and it feels like the guys on the Yankees right now all want to be on the Yankees. And they all want to win as Yankees. You've seen Jazz Chisholm look like a kid in a candy store when he's talking to Andy Pettitte and Derek Jeter. Aaron Judge would kiss the logo before he signed his contract. Juan Soto loves New York. He loves being amongst Dominicans. Anthony Volpe grew up a Yankee fan. Marcus Stroman grew up a Yankee fan. It just feels Like, these are guys who want to be here specifically now, specifically with this team. And on the other side, Shohei Ohtani always wanted to be a Dodger. The signs were always there. Who did he sign with first? The Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. He wanted to be in LA. There's a huge Japanese population in LA. Yoshinobu Yamamoto wanted to play with Shohei Ohtani, and he's getting that chance to play in a championship with him. Freddie Freeman wanted to be a Brave, but he's here now. The layers are there. Now, who is going to be the Tommy Edman of this series for the Dodgers? And who is going to be the Giancarlo Stanton of this series for the Yankees? So I don't think it's going to be those two guys, because both of these pitching staffs and coaching staffs are going to do their homework. And I think maybe it's time Jazz Chisholm gets hot for the Yankees, right? And I think it's time Max Muncy gets really hot for the Dodgers. It's going to be a Yankee Stadium for a couple games, that short porch and right. I like those lefties coming through. So, with that, that will be our episode for the week, because we just got to see how it plays out. We've really just got to see how this one plays out. And if you ask me, it's going to be an exciting series. And by the next time we talk, we'll talk awards, and we'll talk who won the championship, and we'll recap the World Series. Thank you so much for listening, guys. It's been fun. It always is. And I will see you sometime next week. Goodbye, everybody.